Waiting, and there we are. Hey, okay.
Beth Chris can get up with hopefully not hitting anything.
Yes, try not to knock over
girl.
any of the sensitive electronics, and excuse the awkward camera angle there. As we enter quarantine day number 35, and the only reason I know it's day number 35 is because we've been doing this show. This is week number 5 of the show for us.
And for those of you who have not met, this is Eris, our office kitty. And I just lost the new book that I'm going to use.
Yes, yeah, please, okay. Everything is very precarious in here right now.
So, well, we're about to do a renovation a week from today, and so this room's becoming kind of a catch-all for things I'm moving out of the room that's getting renovated.
Yes.
So Eris is a little upset about that, and well, we're currently in her seat.
Yeah, so you can tell that maybe we want to get out a little bit. Beth actually got all done up for you tonight.
I didn't want to look dead like the dolls we're going to talk about.
Yeah,
but I do have the skull earrings on, and
yes.
I do have the lovely spider thing, because skulls, spiders, creepy dolls, they all kind of go together.
Yeah. I put on pants for you. You're welcome. So,
and Eris is going to take her exit
and Eris is on her way out. But yes, as Beth alluded to, we are going to be chatting up our haunted dolls tonight, and because who couldn't use a little nightmare fuel at a time like this?
And it is nightmare fuel.
Yes.
It is very nightmare fuel, as I was researching.
So we went ahead, we got ourselves, got our beverages all good to go, got a little Yingling.
Brought to you by Bold Rock.
Yes, Yingling, and the Yingling's actually just a chaser for the gem, the Jameson. So
we're going to have a water chaser tonight.
Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to have a few drinks. I hope you can have a few drinks with us here. And I know it feels like 3,500, doesn't it? Though.
Oh, good Lord! Please let us out soon.
But
please,
yes.
we literally got to talk to one of our local businesses that we actually partner with for some of our history and ghost tours, and just seeing him and talking to him at a respectable distance earlier this week was just a big mood lifter, because talking to people on the phone and Facebook Live and other video chats just isn't the same. I need that face-to-face contact, and I miss it. I really miss being around my customers.
Yes.
And around my business partners and my friends and my family.
And hello again, Glenn. Thanks for tuning in. And yes, thank you. Oh, you were looking forward to tonight. Oh, yay. Thank you. No pants was not the kind of scare you were looking for tonight. Yes. Yeah, I totally get that.
When we go back to Scottish Ghost, he can wear the plaid pajama pants. I've given permission for that. I don't have plaid pajamas. Sorry, I will not be in that.
So, but shall we go ahead and dive in?
Yeah, today's actually the 1-year anniversary of Lorraine Warren's death from last year, and those of you that are in the paranormal community know that she and her husband Ed were one of the forerunners of paranormal investigations. They investigated for decades, and a lot of their stories actually have led to a lot of the horror movies that we have today, including The Conjuring, The Nun, Annabelle, the Amityville Horror House. Those were all their investigations. And
hey, and there's actually that's Matt from Rich Brow.
Hey,
he's
Matt!
watching. Hey, Matt.
So yeah, we're gonna start today off, because it is the anniversary of her passing. We're actually gonna start today off with Annabelle.
Yes, and just to answer your question, Alex, that yes, you got the spelling of Eris correct there. So yeah, and very sad. It was sad that Lorraine Warren did pass away there.
Yeah.
She lived a good full life. Her and her husband both. So
they paved the way for a lot of paranormal investigation teams that we have today. So we are very thankful for their groundwork that they did for us. So we're gonna jump right into the creepy doll that is Annabelle. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I spent time working on this introduction, and she wants to skip right over.
I'm not going to skip it.
So, anyways,
it's the reason why we have Frickin' Frack back here.
Yes, Frickin' Frack, our little shoulder dolls here behind us.
Closest thing I have to dolls.
Yes, and but anyways, so dolls, toys in general. It's kind of a fine line between adorable childhood toys to creepy nightmare fuel. From chasing a bright red ball across a well-manicured green lawn to the deflated dirty ball in a muddy ditch. From lining up toy soldiers to a pile of broken figures in the corner of an abandoned basement. And from a flawless porcelain visage of an elegant doll to a scruffed, dirty face with a broken eye. Toys are often beautiful and treasured when well taken care of, the epitome of an idyllic childhood. However, when those toys are neglected, abused, or forgotten, those traits, when taken out of context, can often be projected onto the owners. At best, one can't help but think about the loss of youthful innocence. At worst, if this is the condition of the toy, what is the condition of the owner? Complicating the line between adorable and terrifying even further can come from throwing in a touch of the paranormal. Is it possible for toys to be possessed, haunted, cursed? Many think so, and tales of such can be found all around the globe. And our first tale, as Beth is all too eager to jump into, is just up the road in Connecticut.
Yes, unfortunately we cannot go see Annabelle right now. The museum that she is in, that the Warrens started, has been closed since Lorraine's passing. I don't know if they're going to ever plan to open it back up again for any visits, but the museum's still there. As far as I know, everything is still inside the museum.
Because it wasn't really intended so much to be a museum in the first place.
No, it was a collection of haunted paranormal objects that they had discovered during their investigations, and they brought them away from these places to hopefully end all the paranormal activity, and they collected them in this one location. And that's where, as far as we know, Annabelle is still located today. But Annabelle, originally the doll from the movie The Conjuring, and then she got her own movie. This was one of their cases. And Annabelle was a Raggedy Ann doll that was discovered at a flea market in 1970 and was given to a woman named Donna, who was a nursing student at the time. It was given to her by her mother. And Donna loved the doll. She had it in her house, and she would have it sitting around in the living room, in her bedroom, various locations. And then she and her roommate Angie started to notice some strange things happening. The doll would move slightly, just a tilt of the head or a moving of the arm or the leg, something that it was not in the same position that it had been when they had last seen it. Then it went up a notch, and all of a sudden it's not just the doll that's moving herself. The doll is now moving locations. It would move from a bed to a chair, from a chair to a couch, from room to room. It had been left in the bedroom. They came home from school, and it was in the living room on the couch watching TV. That started to concern them a little bit, but again, nothing terrifying yet. It wasn't until the doll started having notes show up with it. Now, these were notes that were written down on parchment paper, and there was no parchment paper in the house. Neither Angie nor Donna had ever bought parchment paper to bring into the house. And she would have little notes written on it. Some of them said, "Help me." Some of them said, "Kill Lou." Lou was Angie's fiance. Other times it looked like the writing was in blood, and Annabelle actually had droplets of blood on her dress. And this is when things started to get really freaky. So Donna called in a local paranormal investigation group and psychic and asked them to help them figure out what's going on with this doll. And they're the ones who came up with this. Was a little girl about 7 or 8 years old who had died on the property, not necessarily the building that was there, but somewhere on the property when this had been a homestead or a farm way back when. And so they said, well, the best thing to do is that this was a girl who had been abandoned, and Donna did not want to abandon this little girl again, and so she decided to keep the doll, and she treated it like a little girl, and hopefully that would appease Annabelle. That didn't work too well. Lou actually started to argue to both Angie and Donna that this doll was evil and that they needed to get rid of the doll. And that's when Annabelle turned on Lou, and she started to attack him. He reported one night when he was sleeping over that he felt something crawling up its legs, and when he flipped on the light, it was Annabelle. She was up to his chest and then going for his throat. He was actually almost strangled by her. Another time he was going into the darkened bedroom where Annabelle was residing at that point, and he had heard a clatter or something crash, and so he went to go investigate. When he opened up the door and walked into the dark room, he felt something attack his belly, his stomach area, and when he turned on the lights, he actually had huge scratch marks, bloody scratch marks across his belly, and Annabelle was lying on the floor at his feet. It's at this point in time that Lorraine and Ed are actually contacted by Donna to come in and find out what's going on with this doll. How do they stop what's going on with this doll? And that's when Lorraine actually says it is not a child's ghost. It is a demon inside this doll. And those of you that are familiar with your demonology, they tend to take the form of a child. They try to imitate a child to make you feel less threatened by them and take them in and invite them in. And then they can wreak havoc. They did an exorcism on Annabelle, and with hopes that it got rid of the demon, then Ed and Lorraine took the doll and brought it back to their home. Well, on their way home, they had several things happen to them, including their brakes failing on their car. People who have visited the doll in the museum have taunted it, and they've had fatal accidents as they leave the museum. So Annabelle's not a doll to be messed with, especially if it's got a demon in it, not something to be messed with.
Yes. Oh, are you looking to come back in
We'll
here,
see,
Eris?
you might see a little kitty tail every now and then.
Yes. Eris wants to be social tonight, apparently. Although, did you feed her before we started?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
She
Never
still
mind.
has half her food downstairs,
All
so
right.
she probably wants more.
Yeah,
Our
probably.
cat has hollow tail syndrome.
Today.
Today is a I must eat at everything day.
Yes.
And so.
But yes, that's the story of Annabelle, and of course the Warrens, those foremost investigators of the paranormal that really set the groundwork for so many that are doing that kind of similar work today. Mm-hmm. And yep, the museum is still up there. Ed and Lorraine have since passed away. We didn't get a chance to do any additional research to see who's caretaking for the facility today or whatnot.
Yeah.
But we believe that we know that everything is still there, kind of under lock and key, because that's what Ed and Lorraine would have wanted.
Yeah.
But as far as who's exactly taking care of it, that is a good question.
Now, we do also know that a lot of their interviews that they did later in life and some of their EVP recordings, you can find them sometimes on YouTube or on various paranormal sites as well. So that is something that you can check out, look up. I haven't actually done an extensive search, but there's a lot of things out there that you can just do a good internet search and find them.
Yes.
Especially around the anniversaries.
Yeah.
So,
with that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to take our trip abroad, as we have been doing every week. We got some stories from around the globe, and our first one, we are going to go all the way around the globe. We are going to head all the way down to Australia
and I will say, this is the one that creeped me out the most, because I really don't like marionettes. For some reason, that is the doll that creeps me out the most.
Yeah, if you look up a picture of this this doll while we're chatting, you'll see exactly what Beth means. It's
creepy.
It is kind of creepy. But this takes place in a small town, or the town of Wagga Wagga. Yes, that's truly the name of the place. Wagga
And
Wagga.
it's not Fozzie saying it.
No. New South Wales in Australia. It's about halfway between Melbourne and Sydney, and it goes back to the 1970s when a man named Kerry Walton, he was in about his 20s at that time, was home to attend a funeral. While there, Kerry recalled an old abandoned house that used to frighten him as a child. He decided to face those fears and explore the house at night, and enlisted his brother to the cause. Around midnight, the brothers found an opening in the building's cellar and entered. The dim light from their flashlight passed over the building supports of brick and timber, and they were startled to see a pair of eyes staring back at them. They appeared to be the eyes of a dead child sitting on its own.
I'd be out of there at that point in time.
Upon closer inspection, they actually did go and closer inspection, the brothers discovered that it was not a child, but it was actually a grotesque-looking marionette. Having reached their threshold for being creeped out for the night, for whatever reason, they decided to grab the marionette and they took it with them. They threw it in a bag and started on their way home. On the way, the brothers thought they saw some movement from within the bag. To cope with the unsettling evening that they had had thus far, they gave the doll and the bag a funny name. Letta Me Out, or Let Me Out, Letta Me Out, or simply Letta for short. So Letta the doll. Once at home, the brothers shared their strange find with their very apprehensive family. It turns out that the appearance of the doll was the least of their concerns. The doll would appear to move around on its own, with strange scuff marks appearing on the floor each morning, apparently from the shoes of the doll. In addition, some people reported feeling nauseous or faint when around the doll, and dogs would act strangely as well, feeling compelled to try and bite or attack it. As word spread of the unusual doll, a buyer came forth with an offer for it. Carrie initially jumped at the opportunity to get the thing out of his life and potentially make some money off of it, but when the time came to make the exchange, Carrie could not bring himself to carry through with the sale. The doll appeared to have gained a foothold in the family's mind, so Carrie decided to find out as much as he could about his new member of the family. He took it to a museum where they were able to help him out quite a bit, actually. Starting with the nails that were used to attach the feet of the doll to the legs, they estimated that the doll must be about 200 years old, and likely originated in Eastern Europe due to the style. The doll's hair was also real hair, and under the scalp was the likeness of a human brain. They left no detail to, they didn't spare any of the details on this creepy thing. Yes. So, Carrie, instead of being, kind of grossed out a bit, his interest was truly piqued, and he started to explore the paranormal by taking Letta to a psychic. The psychic unveiled an unsettling and sad tale to Carrie. According to the psychic, the doll maker had carved Letta as an exaggerated likeness of his own son who had drowned at the age of 6 years old. Dolls were strongly believed to be able to harbor a human soul after death and providing it with a new worldly home. Letta the doll is still believed to carry the boy's soul. It is not necessarily malicious or dark, but just a child who is about 2 centuries older after drowning. Carrie decided at that point to never part from Letta. Letta continues to have effects on those who come close to it. People will often gasp when first seeing the exaggerated features in the doll's face, and there's something about the doll's eyes that provoke strong emotions of sadness or fear. More than one woman has broken into crying fits, screaming hysterics, or fainting altogether. Letta still tries to get around on his own, changing positions when left alone or giving off a pulsing feeling when held. Letta still resides with Carrie's family today and is often put on exhibition for others to see. You can even find Letta on his own Facebook page. Check it out after we're done here. And it's named Letta Me Out. It's all just as well for Carrie's family, as the psychic also let Carrie know that a great misfortune would befall the family if they were ever to part ways from the doll. So that is the story of Letta Me Out of Wagga Wagga, New South Wales in Australia.
Yes, and I was actually trying to look something up because Glenn had asked the question of if we knew of any dolls that had been recovered from the Titanic sinking. I have been to the Titanic mobile exhibit, but it was years ago when I was first applying to colleges. And I remember they did have a children's section in there, and I think there were a couple dolls. I don't know if they're haunted. I know that section is haunted, however. So I will have to dig and do a little more research on that, Glenn.
Yep. So, moving along, shall we?
We're going to go over to Japan.
Stay in the same hemisphere as we're going to stay over in the
Again, I never want to go ghost hunting in Japan.
Yes.
I really don't. But this next doll, actually, I'd be kind of curious to see. Her name is Okiku, and she is a doll that grows human hair. So the story goes, in 1918, 17-year-old Akichi Suzuki from Hokkaido bought a doll for his 2-year-old sister, Okiku, and he brought it back. The doll was porcelain, about 16 inches tall. She wore a traditional Japanese kimono, and she had black eyes and black hair that was cut in the traditional akapa head style, with bangs that were straight down, so cut straight across, and then that was cut just above the eyebrows, and then, of course, the back and the sides were cut in a very blunt line just above the shoulders to where the neck is. Okiku loved the doll so very much as she actually named it after herself. She took it everywhere with her, slept with it every single night. A year later, at the age of 3, she became very ill. And unfortunately, she had the flu, the influenza, and she did not survive. She succumbed to it pretty quickly. She left her family behind, and they were overcome with grief. The family actually took Okiku's doll and placed her in a small shrine for remembrance. They started praying to the doll, and that's when they noticed the doll, whose hair had been cropped at up just about the jawline, was now noticeably longer and somewhat unkept around the ends. They believed that the spirit of their daughter had actually come to possess the doll. As the doll's hair grew longer and longer, they would have to cut it. In 1938, the family decided it was time to leave Hokkaido, and they did not want to actually take the daughter's doll with them. They felt that she should remain there. So they went to the local monastery, the Manjani Temple, and asked if they would care for the doll. And they explained what had happened and what they believed. And usually they won't do something like this, but the monks actually felt a need to actually take care of this doll, and they agreed to accept it and to make sure that everything was taken care of with it. And it was put in a place of protection and a place where people could view it, could pray to it if they wanted to. A strand of hair was actually taken from the doll and sent to a lab to have it tested, and that's where it actually was confirmed that it was human hair, and that it was hair from a child. They were actually able to carbon date it. The test confirmed the family's belief that it had been growing and had been growing naturally. Since then, Okiku has been housed in a mono wooden box where she remains to this day. Her hair still grows, and haircuts have become a regular task at the temple. A shrine has grown up around her with pictures of her differing lengths of hair on display, and they've also put some of the lengths of hair tied with a ribbon that they've cut off around the doll as well. I see you're typing.
Oh, I can jump in. I can jump in.
Okay.
Yes, yeah. I'm trying to be social.
That's okay. I was just curious what was the question.
Oh, just you're responding to people that were talking about
Okay.
the stories that we're telling.
All right, so this next one is reminds me of a scene out of Fallout.
Yeah. Now
It really does.
This one isn't really haunted.
No, but it is a creepy doll place.
It is very creepy, and it is still in Japan. So this is in the village of Nagoro, Japan. And it's a tiny village, very, very small. Just a few dozen people actually live there. But if you walk in and you're not looking very closely, you wouldn't be blamed for thinking that there's a few hundred. So its unique and notable feature is that it has a life-size doll population that outnumbers the human population nearly 10 to 1. Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
It's a real-life toyland.
Yeah. So the toy residents are the work of local Tsuzuki Ayano, who began making doll replicas of her friends and neighbors after they died or moved away. The eerie doppelgangers can be seen in various positions across town. There's a fisherman on the riverbank, students filling classrooms, elderly couples resting on benches outside of buildings.
It kind of reminds me of the old testing sites for the 1940s bombs that they used to have for the nuclear bomb sites.
Yeah,
it really does remind me of that.
Oh, you know what? I hadn't thought of that. Just makes it that much worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so they're all over the place in town, and the population of these dolls is huge. There's about 350 of them, which is 10 to 1, speaks to the very small population of people.
It's only about 27 people.
Only 27 people when at the time that we looked it up and this was written.
And the youngest person was 50 years old.
Yeah, it's
a
town,
dying town.
Yeah, kind of sad. And it makes for I know she meant for it to be like it was well intentioned, but for somebody that's coming in from out of the blue, it's got to be something kind of crazy, even a little terrifying to walk in and find a village of dolls like this.
And I only have to think about what this place is going to look like in 10, 20 years when the residents are gone. If they don't get an influx of new residents, it's going to become overgrown and even that much more creepy.
Yes.
Creepy dolls.
Yes. So yeah, Japan, no shortage of creepy stuff and ghost stories. Yeah, that was our second week in a row with having a couple of Japan ghost stories.
No Japan next week.
Yes.
We're going to stay all in the States next week.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Come back to that.
We'll come back to that at the end here.
So we're going to hop over to Canada.
Yes, we're coming back over this side of the Pacific, and we're going to go ahead and visit our neighbor to the north. The West Coast.
Yeah,
West Coast.
British Columbia.
British Columbia.
So this is the story of Mandy. Now, Mandy is actually housed in the District Museum. Am I right on that?
The Quesnel Museum. Yeah. It's the Quesnel and District Museum. Okay. I think Quesnel is the name of somebody who contributed, and it's the District Museum. So it's the Quesnel and District Museum.
Now, the woman who donated Mandy to the museum wanted to remain anonymous, but she had discovered Mandy in the basement of her building, and she explained that she basically would hear faint baby noise coming from the basement, coming from the doll. And this would happen during the middle of the night when she would go to investigate. She would find the doll next to an open window. She stated this happened so much that she could not keep the doll in the house, just on sheer security purposes, because that window was always locked when she went to bed, but she'd hear the baby cry, and she'd go down, find the doll right next to the window, and the window was open. So I can understand her not wanting this doll in the house anymore, especially if it opens windows.
Yeah.
And Mandy was also a bit of a troublemaker in the museum as well. When she was put on display, the staff started to notice that office supplies and personal items started going missing. It got serious when lunches started disappearing.
Yeah. Now, with that said, it's so stereotypical almost. I mean, the
fess up to stealing
the lunch. the stereotypical stealing of the lunches. But the thing is that the lunches they didn't permanently go missing. It wasn't like somebody was stealing them and eating them.
They actually would show up in some of the display cases.
Or locked in desk drawers, and they'd be all over the place. Sorry.
Pop-ups.
Yep, pop-ups. But yeah, so they would, they wind up showing up all over the place, and they'd be locked drawers, and also, there would also be kind of the, the stereotypical, you're hearing of footsteps as well when nobody's around. So, a little kind of cliche on the haunting, but it's all.
Well, also, I mean, you have cameras malfunctioning around here. When people tried to take pictures, your battery would completely deplete. You walk away, your battery's fine. So there are a lot of different things happening around Mandy. She also was actually given a companion. Another doll was placed in the same display case as her, as a way to maybe calm her down. Mandy's a very jealous doll. She doesn't like the spotlight to be on anybody but her. She's a diva. So when they would place a companion doll in the same case as her, she would actually harm that doll. Things would happen to that doll. The clothes would be torn. Other things would happen. Parts of the facial would get disfigured.
Yes.
And Mandy also likes to display hop. She likes to go into other display cases as well. So that's just another little creepy thing about her.
Yeah, so she's actually featured. If you go to the website for this museum, you can find she has her own little page, and they do talk about her because she has come to be such a draw. She kind of flew under the radar for the longest time.
I had never heard about her before I started to research this.
Yeah, but it was in the 90s when the museum curator was approached with the question about any good ghost stories associated with the museum. And not thinking too much of it, the curator did submit the story of Mandy and the occurrences that happened around this doll. Well, it took a few years, but when the book Supernatural Stories Around British Columbia was published in 1999, Mandy's story spread across Canada like wildfire. The museum was soon inundated with both requests for interviews and by new guests who wanted to see Mandy for themselves.
Now, it's at this point they actually put Mandy in her own room because so many people wanted to see her. Mandy does not like being in her own room. She actually threw a temper tantrum. She took papers and scattered them around the room. I don't know if they actually took her out of that, or maybe they put other things in the room with her, but she's still the focus of the room.
Yes, very much so. She had to be the center of attention. Now, it's very unclear why this activity happens around Mandy. The history of the doll is not well documented, and one of the theories is that there's the suggestion that there was a little girl that passed away in the basement of the house where the doll was found, and that the girl's spirit is now one with Mandy. It's very similar to the story of, Annabelle.
Except for it's not a demon.
True, not a demon.
Not a demon.
But that, or similar to the stories that, Letta.
Letta.
Yeah, that there can be, children and people in general can inhabit dolls and inanimate objects when they pass away. Mandy is still there at the museum to this day and keeping herself entertained with little pranks and scaring people, but no one knows for sure exactly who she is. The only certainty is that people still flock to the museum to this day to visit her, and that the activity does continue.
Yep, if we ever get up to British Columbia, we'll
Might have to pop in there.
go see if we can see Mandy.
Yes.
Alright, so now we're going to go to the Isle of Dalles. A lot of you probably have heard about this. It's down in Mexico.
Yeah, very popular.
It's been featured on both Ghost Adventures and Josh Gates' Destination Truth. It is in a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's hidden among the floating gardens, but it's actually outside the main floating gardens. There's actually a fake one inside, so just be wary. If you go to this one, you want to arrange to go to the real one, not the fake one. Now, the real one, you have to arrange for a private boat to take you over there. And it's not an easy trip because you have to switch boats partway through. Motorboats can't go through. You have to take a canoe over a dam and then basically do a canoe trip out there, come back, bring the canoe back over the dam, and then get in your motorboat and go. So it's an arduous trip to go out there. But the man who actually owned it was Julian Santamaria, and Julian unfortunately found the body of a dead girl in a nearby canal one day, and he had started to hear her after that and started to talk to her after that, and he basically decided, well, if I buy her a doll, maybe she'll quiet down, maybe she'll be appeased, and that's how it started. He bought her a doll and he hung it up on a tree nearby where he had found her body, and he continued to buy her dolls over and over and over again and started placing them all around the island.
I thought the first doll was actually found near her, not bought.
He bought one as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Never mind. Sorry.
I'm not sure if that first doll was buried with her or if it was placed on the island.
More research is required.
Yeah, it depends on what story you look at. Again, there's a lot of different tales out there.
And this does go back, goes back, 60, 70 years at this point. So it goes back a long ways.
So he started buying more and more toys and more dolls to ward off this evil spirit. Some say it was a little girl, some say it was mermaids in the area. He actually referred to them as mermaids because the voices were coming from the water. And they kept trying to whisper to him to call him into the water. And he was always afraid that one day he would not be strong enough and he would be pulled into the water by these spirits and drowned like the girl was. He actually ended up having his nephew come by and see him and bring him groceries and other things that would go on. And they decided to go out fishing. His nephew is Anastasio. He is now the owner of the island today. But he came to visit him. The both of them went fishing. While in the water, Julian began to sing. And when he finished, his nephew asked him why he was singing. And he replied that it was to keep the spirits of the mermaids away, because the water was always a dangerous place to him because they kept trying to draw him into it. When his nephew got back to the island with his uncle, the nephew went up to check on the pumpkins that his uncle was growing, and then he came back down to the water to help his uncle clean their catch, and that's when he found his uncle face down in the water, drowned. So apparently the mermaids won that day. Now it is believed in those canals that all those islands are surrounded by, that it's all haunted by the spirits or the souls of soldiers from the past there, so those could be the ones who were calling out to him. Those could be his mermaids. Creepy. Very
creepy down there. I mean, the whole setting. It's just primed to be the set for a horror movie.
It is. This is one place I would never go. As curious as I am about these stories, I will never go to this island because it creeps me out just looking on the TV to look at it.
If you do want to, quote-unquote, visit the island, I'm sure you can find some pictures online, of course. But then, as Beth mentioned...
There's a whole travel place where you can go to get tickets to go to this island.
Well, yes, yeah, there's that. If you're so inclined to actually try and go down there yourself. And as Beth said, a couple of TV shows have gone down there and done investigations. Mm-hmm. So You can look up the Ghost Adventures episode or Josh Gates' Destination Truth.
Yeah, there was one doll that winked at one of the boys during, I think it was Aaron, who was in there, and that just freaked him out. Same building that Aaron got winked at. One of the boys in Josh Gates' team actually was in there, and something jumped on the roof and scared him half to death. They didn't see anything. They had cameras set up outside. Nothing appeared on the cameras, but you can hear this thing land on the roof, and it created quite a clatter.
Yes. So very creepy down there.
Yes, and a lot of people who do actually go visit, they bring a doll with them as an offering when they go.
Yeah, so dolls and doll pieces all over the place.
Yeah.
Very much like the next location that we have, which is a little closer to home.
This is in Georgia.
Down in Georgia, yes. Now this one, just like the second location we talked about in Japan, doesn't necessarily have any paranormal activity associated with it. It's
a creepy doll place.
Really creepy doll place. This is down in Constitution Lakes Park outside of Atlanta, Georgia. Constitution Lake was formed after the South River Brick Company stopped digging up the famous Georgia clay they were using to form their bricks. Nature soon took over the land, and the brickworks clay pits filled with rain, creating a system of man-made ponds. In 2003, DeKalb County purchased the property and began constructing paved hiking trails and boardwalks around the ponds. The land eventually turned into a 125-acre nature preserve. Dalles Head Trail was not something created by DeKalb County. Instead, it was the work of a local carpenter, Joel Slatton. It started with his vision of an art project, created from discarded doll parts and other trash that was littered around the site. Eventually, Slatton encouraged other visitors to contribute their own found art as well, and since then, parts and pieces have been rolling in. Although it is primarily doll heads, of all things, of course it's got to be the doll heads.
Winky eye.
Yeah. The trail also includes bottle creations, random collages, truck part tableaus, and decorated bricks. Although unsettling to say the least, what's unique about the trail is that every part must be found within the park. It's a form of repurposing the trash that litters the park into something strange and special and more than just a little creepy.
Yeah.
So.
I'd actually be curious if they have any haunted tales to go with this place. I searched. I could not find any. I just thought the trail was really cool.
Yes.
I'm curious if Jamie's actually ever hiked it.
Good question.
I'd have to look to see if he's close nearby there. I'd say, hey, go on a recon for me.
It's time to visit them down that way.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. Well, our grand finale.
Our grand finale. So this is the one doll we have gone to visit.
Yes.
And you will always treat this doll with respect, or else, as we found out.
Or else. This one rivals Annabelle for nasty activity. So we are going to go a little further south. This episode, we will admit, we do not have anything from Virginia. No. So somebody asked if we had anything from Virginia. Pointed out, good point, might be to look into haunted plantations to see if plantations have any toys hanging around.
Yep.
So this will not be our last episode on this subject because, well, there's a lot of creepy dolls out there.
Yeah, and there's a lot of haunted objects out there, too, that I'm going to look at doing an episode on as well.
Yes. So yeah, maybe mix up some haunted dolls with other haunted objects for another episode.
Yeah.
But back to this one. So heading south from Georgia, head south from Georgia, you're going to hit Florida. You hit Florida, keep driving for another 12 hours, something like that. Mm-hmm. You'll eventually go as far as you can get in a car over land and over a whole bunch of bridges and islands and whatnot, as well as you reach Key West, Florida.
So somebody popped up, Patrick, I think it was, Robert the Dog.
Yes!
You are correct.
Yes. Congratulations, you guessed it.
That was our photo for this episode.
Yes, yeah. Well, yeah, heck, we gave it away. I gave it away. It was our cover picture, which, by the way, I took that picture, and, well, we'll get back to that. We'll get there. So, anyways, Robert the Doll is a well-known haunted object that now resides in the Fort East Martello Museum in Key West, Florida. So we visited there about 3 years ago, and it took the Ghosts and Gravestones tour, which takes you to see Robert the Doll amongst their other stops. When the tour arrives at the fort, you are given very specific instructions.
And follow them.
Follow them to the T. And even then, you might not get off the hook.
Yeah,
But still.
don't do any side comments, nothing. You are on your best behavior. You are in front of your great-grandma, and you do not mess with her.
Yes.
Same thing with Robert the doll.
Yes. Robert the doll is very, very particular.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
We will not speak ill of him.
No, he is an awesome doll.
Yes, very awesome doll. So, first of all, there's no wandering away from the group. That's just, that's kind of standard anyways. I mean, you're within a, historic site, and so you shouldn't be wandering
Historic site,
off.
a museum, and they have very special permission to be in there, so you don't wander.
Yeah. So, second, once you do get to see Robert the doll, if you want to take a picture, you need to introduce yourself and ask permission first. I did these things. So let's be very clear about that. I was polite. I asked permission. And then after you do take your picture, you need to remember to thank him for the picture and say goodbye to him before you leave. If you skip any of these steps, there's a very good chance that you will walk away haunted or cursed.
Now, I will say, Chris had the camera. I was not taking pictures with my phone. I walked up, I introduced myself, I said, "Nice to meet you finally, Robert. I will not be taking your picture because I do not have my phone on me tonight. So I hope you don't mind. I'll just walk around you and I'll then let other people come by and say hi to you and take your picture. But thank you for this evening. I've always wanted to meet you."
And we did.
And we did. And then I walked away and
quietly hid in the corner while I took
because
the
I
pictures.
gotta tell you, the energy around Robert the doll is very poignant. It's creepy as all get out. I could not get out of that room fast enough. I felt like I couldn't breathe in that room. So I was over by the TV area where they show photos, basically a slideshow of all the letters that are sent to Robert. So many people who have not followed the directions have found themselves cursed. Or have bad luck following them everywhere, that they have written letters to Robert, and every morning the staff reads those letters to Robert apologizing for any slight they may have given him. Once that is done, he seems to forgive them and their curse is gone. So
but you don't want to get cursed in the first place.
You don't want to get cursed in the first place. So we left, went on the rest of our tour. The next day we were going to go out biking along a beach that was close to where that fort was. And we looked everywhere for our bike lock keys. They were supposed to be one in my purse and one on the desk. That's where we had left them. We couldn't find them. We tossed our room like 2-3 times. Could not find them. I'm like, oh God, did I disrupt? So I said out loud, "Robert, I am sorry if I dissed you in any way, if I disrespected you in any way. I did not mean to. I'm sorry if I didn't take your picture. Again, I didn't have a camera. I am so sorry. My husband took your picture. I hope he followed the rules." After I said this and asked, "Please forgive me," Chris found the key on the desk and I found the key in my purse, even though we had tossed both locations
multiple times. And they weren't like tucked away or anything like that.
I just reached in and there's the key. So that was our experience with Robert and Beth.
Yes.
Another couple went to visit on the same tour that we took.
Yes.
And I find this amusing because the guy's name is Chris as well. But he went to visit, and he actually had the full story of Robert's background. So Robert is actually a doll that was given to a child named Eugene. And this is where the story varies. Some say the doll was given to Eugene by his grandfather, and then when a maid was dismissed, or a housekeeper was dismissed suddenly, she took the doll and cursed it. Others say it was given to Eugene by the housekeeper as a form of revenge because she had been very mistreated by this family, and she wanted to get back at them.
And in the end of it, she was also abruptly fired.
Yeah.
After everything she had put up with from this family over the years, they just up and abruptly fired her. And that was that.
No reference, nothing. So she made a little sailor suit for it that it was similar to one that Eugene wore, and gave the doll back to Eugene. After that, Eugene carried the doll everywhere with him.
Inseparable.
Very inseparable. And Robert would appear to move. Robert would appear to do things. Robert would appear to talk to Eugene, and Eugene would talk back, and his parents would hear this, and they thought originally it was Eugene changing his voice, but then they actually heard it and saw that Eugene was not talking. And I'm pretty sure Eugene was not a ventriloquist. Another night, there was a lot of crashing, banging coming from Eugene's room, and they walked into the room to discover furniture smashed. Eugene across the room from Robert, excuse me, and he pointed at Robert and said, "Robert did it."
Robert did it. Robert made me do it was a very common refrain.
So Eugene grows up and goes away, gets married, comes back, and Robert is still next to Eugene. He sits in Eugene's studio. Eugene is an artist at this point in time. He sits at the table. The wife is not too pleased with this. Eugene is a grown man. He should not have this doll with him.
I'm kind of curious how it got to that point. I mean, Eugene was never separated from Robert.
Yeah.
The woman must have known about Robert before she married Eugene.
I want to know, did he go on dates?
Was it set up? Arranged marriage?
It could have been arranged marriage.
Maybe it was an arranged marriage.
Anyway,
I don't know.
So she put her foot down, and she banished Robert to the attic. It is at this point in time, neighbors start reporting that they see Robert moving from window to window, pulling back the curtains and looking out, and just creeping people out, basically.
And then from within the house, they would regularly hear the sounds of furniture being moved around up in the attic. And not just, like, moved around, like being almost
like
crashing, almost thrown around the room, being angrily shoved about. There also will be loud pacing sounds, pacing steps up there, and neighbors, well, as you already said, reported seeing Robert peeking out of the windows.
Yeah. So eventually his wife, who was Annette, I believe was her name.
Yes, Annette relented.
She relented. She allowed Robert back downstairs. And Robert stayed with Eugene until he died at the age of 72. After that, she banished Robert back to the attic, sold the house, and left Robert in the house.
She wasn't going to, yeah.
She wasn't going to take Robert.
She wasn't going to take Robert, which, I don't know, maybe it worked out for her. Her story kind of falls off the face of the planet at that point.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the family that bought the house had a 7-year-old daughter, and she discovered Robert in the attic and brought him downstairs. And she would play with him. And then something turned, and again, she started to have furniture moved in her room, crashing late at night. The parents came rushing in. She was across the room from Robert, screaming, "He tried to kill me." That's when Robert went to the museum. To this day, this poor, now grown woman believes that doll is still going to kill her at some point in time. So Robert was put on display, and people were given very strict instructions on what to do with Robert. If Robert travels anywhere, Robert travels in the front seat with a seatbelt on in a very special seat. He is treated to first class everything so that he is not disrespected in any way, shape, or form.
So,
this is not a doll to mess with.
It is not a doll to mess with. If you decide to go visit Robert the doll, just be very, very careful. And do not ever speak ill of him. Yeah. We had our little brush with him. We learned our lesson.
Yep.
And even though we haven't been back to visit him since, we still will never speak ill of Robert the doll to this day.
We did mention the other couple. So this is what their experience was. Again, they were on the same tour we were. And they followed the instructions, or they thought they followed the instructions. But apparently the husband, Chris, had made a comment about a grown man carrying around a doll. It was disrespectful. Robert didn't care for it. Well, that's when their troubles began. The next day, their flight home was delayed. Then they had to rebook because the plane was too heavy. Then they had to switch carriers. This caused about a 5-hour delay in layover. Coincidence? Maybe. Happens occasionally. When they got home around midnight, their luggage never showed up. They were sent home and told the luggage would probably be on the next flight the next morning. No bag the next morning. When they called the airline couldn't find it. They couldn't explain it. They had no idea where it was. At this point in time, both of them gave in, and they wrote a letter to Robert. Sent it via email. His letter stated, I'm going to read this so I get it right. He said, "Dear Robert, I apologize for Friday night's comment. I think you are the coolest doll ever. I wish you well, and I hope you are staying cool in the summer heat. Please forgive me," was the last line of it before he signed his name. His wife's was very similar. Didn't include the part about the disc because she didn't know he had done that. Again, they were sent via email, 9 a.m. the next morning, the airline called, said, found your bag. It was still in Key West. It was with the original carrier, and they had it on the next flight to come to visit them. So again, once that apology was sent, Robert forgave them. Another gentleman who wrote Haunted Key West, David Sloan, actually talks about the story in here. So we just got this book.
And realize that it looks like Facebook Live does a mirror image, so you're probably seeing it all backwards.
Yeah. But anyway, it's called Haunted Key West, and it's David Sloan, and this one is the one that includes the Haunted Hemingways. He has 2 books that are almost identical, but you want the one that says the Haunted Hemingways. In this, he actually describes a seance that was done in Key West, and he usually doesn't participate in seances. He really doesn't like Ouija boards. He's like me that way. And he decided he was going to participate, and it was himself. It was a local warlock who was basically a white male witch. It was somebody who's sensitive, thank you, or a psychic, and a couple that the psychic had met earlier that day. They're in the room, and of course, David, the first thing he does when he walks into one of these things is he looks for tricks. He looks for anything that could cause anything to rattle, anything to make noise, things that would have been, employed a lot when the seances were big back in the Victorian Edwardian time. He couldn't find anything. They all sat around a table that was empty at that point in time. There was no cloth over it. The warlock started putting out different representations of the 4 elements: earth, air, fire, water. He went out a protective circle. They started their seance with a blessing, and David kept seeing something out of his corner of his eye. He had a sight line to the door, and he kept seeing something kind of poke its head around like it's looking and go back up, poke its head around and go back up. There were stairs outside of there, and at one point the warlock asked him, do you want to go check whatever it is out that you're seeing? And so he gets up and he is left out of the circle. He goes up 4 steps of those stairs leading to the attic, and then he hits an impenetrable barrier. He doesn't know what it is, but he can't move past that 4th step. He comes back down, and he sits down, and the warlock asks him, why didn't you go upstairs? He goes, you try. So the warlock goes, again, hits that 4th stair, cannot get through. Comes back down and says, David, come with me. I want to see if we can both do it. So they go up, they get to that 4th stair. They're able to push with much force. It's kind of think about those balloon rooms that in haunted houses that push 2 balloons together that you have to push your way through. That's kind of what it was like. They get up to the attic, and they're hearing strange noises, something running around. It's very creepy. It's very scary. And they both come back downstairs and decide they're not going to go back up there. Whatever's up there, doesn't want them up there. They conclude the seance. They thank the entities they were trying to talk with, and up until this point he never mentioned it, but that point of that seance was actually to try to contact Robert the doll. Again, you don't mess with him. The size of what David was seeing was about the size of Robert the doll peeking around the corner, and he was messing with him, and he felt disrespected. So again, don't mess with this doll. Be very respectful. He's an awesome doll. He's a cool doll. I probably won't ever go and look at him again, but he was cool to see that one time.
We got our pictures.
We did.
We were respectful.
I want to go back to the museum. I want to see the whole museum, just not that room.
So, Robert, if you are somehow watching out there, we're big fans.
We are.
Yeah. Keep doing what you're doing.
And I definitely recommend anybody go see it, but again, be very respectful.
Yes. So... But yes, that is our stories for creepy haunted dolls for this evening. There are more that we will go ahead and
see what we can look up and find.
Yes.
Again, combined probably with some haunted objects.
Oh, we've got a couple questions here.
What do we have?
Yeah. So somebody, Janet here, asking, are seances disrespectful? Debatable.
Yeah, it's really debatable. A lot of people believe that seances preyed on the weak. And so it got a bad rep. I have never been in a seance, so I really can't say. I am sensitive. It's something that I don't try to draw anything towards me. I get enough things happening to me as it is. Other people have tried, but it's like using a Ouija board. I have used a Ouija board. I don't care for it. I unfortunately had to banish something that was released by a Ouija board in one of my college houses over the summer, and I had to get rid of it before people moved back in again. That was not a fun experience.
Yeah, so I think it all comes down to the tone that you use. Whether you're talking about a seance, Ouija boards, you're getting into dicey territory. We do not own one. We will not own one. No. We will not participate in Ouija board sessions. That is just not something that we do.
Yeah, tarot cards I will do, and I have done. I own several decks. But Ouija boards, no.
No. But a seance, I think at its core, I think that it comes down to the tone that you use. A lot of people, when they do a seance, you'll see it on TV, dramatized all the time. But it's all about how you approach it. Sometimes, if you approach it very respectfully and nicely ask, is a certain relative here? Could you please come, talk to us, let us know you're here. Ask, please, be very polite about it, versus the ones that are sometimes demanding and saying, if you're here, show yourself, do something.
Yeah. Always make sure you take the proper precautions too, because you don't want to let in something, you don't want to invite something in. That is not what you hope. So always be very specific too with what you want to talk to. Don't ever say, is anybody there, is anything there. Be very specific.
Be specific, yes, because you never know what's there and listening, and you don't necessarily want to invite in a bad element.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the experience that I had with the banishment, that's what they did, is they invited something other in.
Yes.
So what do we have?
So there was also, was Robert the Doll the inspiration for Chucky?
It was, actually. Yes. It was.
So I've seen a couple of different sources on this. Though it does say that Robert the Doll was the inspiration for Chucky in the
doll being possessed.
The doll being possessed. The actual physical inspiration for Chucky is more related back to the My Buddy dolls that you may be familiar with. So yeah, if you took a My Buddy and made him possessed, you get Chucky, and the possession coming from the Robert side, the physical appearance from the My Buddy side. So a couple of different inspirations going into Chucky there.
Yep. And
yes, if somebody was very disrespectful to Robert, I hope that, make the coronavirus stop. We want the virus.
We want it to go away too.
We want it to go away too. I'm not sure that I'm going to be trying to wrap Robert into this, though.
No.
That if somebody else does
I think this is more like 7 Plagues of Egypt,
Yeah. If anybody does go ahead and think to apologize to Robert for this, just be respectful about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to think how all the ways that could possibly go wrong.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think those were the questions that we had.
Cool.
But next week, yes.
Next week we're going to go hiking.
Yes. So yeah, we did have a haunted walk-in this evening, and so it'll kind of segue a little bit, or actually it wasn't a haunted walk. It was just a creepy
trail.
Creepy trail. Next week we're going to go, and we're actually going to talk about haunted trails. Mm-hmm. So we got all kinds of haunted trails, and you said all of them from America this time?
All of them from America this time.
So, no international travel next week, but we will be leaving the state of Virginia, at least in the storytelling sense, and traveling about the country to share some stories with you.
There's a lot of haunted hikes out there. I have at least 125 stories that I have found so far, and that's just one book in Pinterest and a few of our resources as well, and I have another book coming, so there's going to be multiple parts of this haunted hike, but there's some very interesting ones. We are also spearing off some more haunted tunnels and trains, because a couple of these hikes are along old railroad track areas and tunnels, old train tunnels, so we'll be getting that going again. Some of them are battlefields, a lot of them are national and state parks. So we'll be having quite a few of those as well, mixed in and around. We have a wonderful story that Chris and I actually told when we first started doing the blog radio, of a ghost dog that is up near the Appalachians. So I think we'll close with that one tonight. This is not on a marked trail anymore. This is an old foot trail that used to go over the mountains when we were still a colony. And the story is a wife came over to Virginia in search of her husband. Her husband had left almost 10 years prior to this to start a homestead over here. And he never sent word to have her come across like he had promised to do. And so finally she was worried so much that she's like, okay, I need to go find him. I need to find out what's going on. Have I been abandoned? Is he dead? Is he alive? I don't know. So she comes abroad, which is very rare for a woman at that point to travel by herself, especially, sailing across the ocean to get here to Virginia. When she gets here, she starts to track his movements west. She gets out to the mountainous area just past Charlottesville, and she actually hears about a large black dog that appears every single night along this one trail. And she asks for more details about the dog because her husband actually left with the family dog. And the more she hears about the description of this dog, the more she's sure this is the family dog. So she asks a group of men to actually take her out to where this dog is seen. They get there, and at sunset, when the dog is said to appear, the dog comes. She stands up, she calls it. It comes trotting over to her, wagging its tail. It sniffs her hand, and she asks, "Where's my husband?" The dog turns around and starts walking away, and then stops, looks back at her, and then starts walking again, basically saying, "Follow me, ma'am." And so she starts to follow the dog, and the dog actually leads her to an area that the earth has been turned over and starts to dig. But that's when she noticed that the dog is not actually digging. It's making the motions, but no dirt is flying up, and that's when she realized the dog is a ghost. She asks a couple of the men to go back and get shovels. They come back, they return, they dig, and they find her husband's body and the dog's body buried under where the ghost dog had been digging. After that, the ghost dog was never seen again. She took the bodies back home and buried them on the family plot back over in England.
Yeah.
So I would love to know where that is. It's somewhere near the Appalachian Trail, but I don't know exactly where it is, and I haven't been able to find where it might be.
Before it was the Appalachian Trail.
Before it was the Appalachian Trail.
So, your little teaser for next week. Hope you enjoyed that.
Yeah.
And so with that, thanks everybody for tuning in again. Greatly appreciate it. We will look, comments. Well, we look forward to this whole shutdown thing being over too, and being able to welcome some of you back out on our tours.
Yeah. As soon as they give us the leeway to even start the tours up, even at a restricted basis, we'll be going, and I'll probably be going every single night, just so people can come out.
Something safe to do, open air activity, keep the groups small. And
something where you can distance yourself a little bit.
Yes, and still hear us talk. So we are looking forward to that day as well, but it's still going to be probably at least several weeks off.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, we will keep doing this every Monday night for the foreseeable future, I suppose. But thanks again so much for tuning in, and we hope that you'll tune in again next week for Haunted Trails. And shameless plug, if you don't mind me wrapping up with this, is if you enjoyed the stories tonight, and if you do want to join us for a tour at some point down the road, if you go to our Facebook newsfeed or Haunts of Richmond on Facebook and look at the top post, the pinned post at the top, there is a link there that will take you to our ticketing website, Peak, where you can actually buy gift cards.
And they're e-gift cards, so you just get them straight to your email and follow the directions, and when we're up and running, we'll be happy to book you.
Yep, exactly. You'll be able to book yourself. You go ahead, you'll get your gift certificate code, and then you can plug it in at checkout when you are ready to go ahead and actually join us for a real in-person tour. So, we greatly appreciate it. We'll be back next week. I'll put up a post for next week's live stream sometime soon. And tell your friends. We love having everybody tune in here and being able to chat with you all. Love the comments. Appreciate you all chiming in. It makes it a lot of fun for us. And with that, I will stop rambling.
Yeah, I think we'll sign off for tonight. Definitely like the Facebook page. Tell your friends to like the Facebook page. And we will see you next week.
All right. Stay safe and healthy, everybody. Good night.
Bye, y'all.